with anticipation for the future because they taught me the meaning of true love and support.
My hands were shaking as I brushed away my tears. I took a deep breath and tried to gather myself. I got up, but not because I wanted my angry husband to see me again. However, I could feel my knees shooting up from my husband's thrashing as I stood up. The little thing infuriated him. I was occupied working on my work report on my laptop, so I was unable to respond to his query. He believed I was ignoring him on purpose, therefore he was unable to contain his rage. That's why his rage was so intense. Instead of hitting my laptop, he gave me a punch. The force of his blow knocked me to the ground. Whenever I attempted to argue with him, he would even kick my knees. This is how it has always been, one small error, and he would lose his mind. I tried to dissolve our marriage several times, but he would always threaten me. Living with his mother, my mother-in-law, is more difficult. She doesn't care that her son is abusing her despite being completely aware of it. When her kid was poised to strike me, she never came running in to try to stop him. She would even verbally insult me whenever she had the opportunity. However, I am aware that they each have two personalities. My parents and grandparents would always treat me well when they came to visit. Naturally, they would threaten to blackmail me, brief me beforehand, and advise me to act normally. They would completely wreck my life if I threw them under the bus. My family has a lot of sway. On my mother's side, my grandparents had a generational will that was written in the 1960s. The singers and artists on my mother's side are well known and respected across the nation. They are well known and wealthy. They never wanted me to wed Samuel, my spouse. In addition to coming from a lower socioeconomic status than us, he has a history of mischievous behavior. However, we met and fell in love in college, and now, after nearly 5 years of marriage, here we are. It is anticipated that I will soon carry on the family legacy as the firstborn grandchild. I was on the verge of suffocation with the weight of my fortune, but I'm used to bearing big loads. That's so much for it. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Amelia, and I'm stuck in an abusive marriage that feels like a nightmare. Ever since I said "I do" at the altar, my life has been a complete debacle. How I wish I had followed my parents' advice and not married my spouse. He was so wonderful back then that there was no hint of evil in him at all. One may argue that I was duped. My spouse, Samuel, is an expert manipulator, and his mother, Rita, was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. I have no doubt about that. They both conspire to mistreat me, even though I have done nothing wrong. They would never stop telling me that they were duped into getting married to me because they assumed we would be wealthy. I was mistaken. He wants to marry me and have my son. That was also my thought. My worst mistake in life was marrying Mother Tusk. My spouse looked directly into my eyes as he spoke those words. I was only a pawn in their devious game, and I know they intended to use me for financial gain. Ever since our marriage began, Samuel has shown his true nature. For the smallest of things, he would lose control and lash out at me with harsh words. His mother, Rita, constantly found a way to defend him, to let him mistreat me, and to strengthen his hold on me. They appear to be operating as a unit. They take great pleasure in making fun of and criticizing me. They continued to poke me not just with physical but also with verbal insults. Words that were already ingrained in my memory were phrases like worthless, useless, ugly, and boring. Every day they yell these words a lot. I am already impervious to their harshness and wickedness. Just look at me. I remember this one night when Samuel became so angry. His response to my unintentional drop of a glass of water on the carpet was nothing short of horrific. With a twisted expression of anger, he took hold of my arm and pulled me in his direction. Are you insane, or are you simply really foolish and unintelligent? Please, there was a mishap. His grasp intensified, causing anguish that I had to conceal as bruises all over my body. If only you were aware of what you were doing, there wouldn't be an accident. You work at only one job. He took hold of my head and pulled it down, toward the carpet. Do you see that? That mess was produced by you. You only managed to muck things up. Us, since you're a mess as well. Well done, Samuel. It aches. You think I'm interested. That's because, well, I don't. He released his hold on me, and I fell to the sodden carpet. My face was dripping with moisture. I started to get up, but Rita stopped me as I attempted to back away. Her tone was tinged with contempt. You were fortunate to have him. Fortunate? In what dimension do being lucky and having a relationship with Samuel have in common? My son gets a lot of grief and even a headache from you. For him, you were not a good fit. Her remarks were like poisoned daggers pointed at my already frail soul as she scoffed at me. Samuel, her darling son, was always first, of course. Oh, I just want to end everything. A phone call from an unidentified number reached me one day when I was sitting in our backyard. I answered it since I'm not one to give out my phone number to strangers, so I was taken aback. Hello? Hey, Amelia, this is Mistress Spencer, the attorney for your grandfather. I regret to notify you of your grandfather's passing. As soon as I received the news, I nearly dropped my phone. Tears filled my eyes, and my voice wavered. Are you sure, really? I find it hard to believe. How? How did this come to pass? Memories that my grandfather and I shared suddenly came flooding back into my head. The good times and even the tragic ones, like having to leave the house because I decided to wed this monster of a spouse. It still amazes me that he's not here. He came to see me here at our house last month and was kind enough to provide me a loan for renovations. My mother-in-law and ungrateful husband would not stop telling everyone how proud they were of it and how it was their money. An automobile collision occurred. It came as a shock, out of the blue. I am aware of how challenging this moment may be for you, but we must get together as soon as possible to go over the specifics of your inheritance. My eyes began to tear up with shock as I thought about the fortune I was going to acquire. I always knew that I would inherit my grandfather's wealth and heritage at some point. Yes, without a doubt. Although I don't want to talk about inheritance at this difficult moment, my grandfather's will stipulates that I must receive the bequest right now. That's all right, Amelia. Give it some time. We can make all the arrangements when you're ready. However, I'm demanding that our meeting be urgent because there is something you need to know. I know you still have to mourn for your loss, but if you can spare a little of your time, please do. Indeed, I did concur with him. I had no idea what we would discuss, but I knew it would be crucial, and I didn't want to squander any time. Before hanging up, we said a couple more hellos. Taking a deep breath, I tried to take the news in. My first feeling of loss gave way to a glimmer of resolve as I stared into the distance. I never thought I'd get this opportunity, but perhaps this is my chance to make a complete turnaround. After my inheritance, the facade of my subservient existence in this miserable home started to come apart. My husband and mother-in-law learned about my grandfather's demise. Even though it was a fake, they were really astonished. I could feel some sincerity, at least. They intended to attend during the funeral service and send flowers. I was too busy packing to hear what they were saying. It may all be an act of showing that they genuinely care. For all I know, they simply want what's mine to inherit. Rita and Samuel took advantage of my newly acquired riches, and I wasn't at all incorrect. Their behavior toward me suddenly changed in a worrying way. They tried to hide their genuine objectives while showering me with phony kindness. They expressed genuine care for me to my family while we were at my grandfather's wake. As her daughter-in-law, my mother-in-law expressed to them how much she valued me. She was quite appreciative that I married her son. Oh God, save me from all this fakeness. Even trying to do skinship with me was my hobby. He continued to round my shoulders with his arms and grasp my hand, demonstrating to my family our deep affection for one another. However, my body language and emotions suggested otherwise. Oh, I just want to get out of this hellhole. I wasn't duped. I could feel their deception and avarice underneath their feigned compassion. Their abrupt shift just confirmed what I already suspected, that they wanted my money. I made the decision to find the truth and reveal their evil plan, just like vultures circle their victim. My grandfather was still buried at the funeral home the next morning. However, I spoke with his attorney for a while. He sat down with me as soon as I arrived at the attorney's office and gave me the facts straight. Amelia, I have a crucial conversation for you to have about your inheritance. There is a letter that your grandfather wrote that is addressed to you individually. My eyes grew wide with excitement. I held onto the chair's edge with my hands. What does the letter say, Mr. Spencer? Mr. Spencer reached inside his desk to get a sealed envelope, which he gave to me. Your grandfather felt that there was a problem in your marriage. He made the decision to look into it more as he had his misgivings. I cautiously opened the mail and saw a handwritten message inside, which made my pulse race. Upon seeing my grandfather's writing, tears welled up in my eyes. He had always gone above and above to demonstrate his concern for me. As I silently read it, my expression changed from one of uncertainty to astonishment. This can't be true. Amelia, I'm afraid it is. Your grandpa found proof that Samuel and you were not really married. He submitted an application to get your inheritance. Even in his afterlife, he desired to keep you safe. At last, I started to cry, a mixture of sadness and rage. I refrained from crying, and my voice broke. I never thought it possible. Samuel seemed to adore me. I knew he changed the moment we were married, even before we were married, but when he was wooing me, I believed his intentions were sincere. His mother, Rita, also looked very sincere in those days. However, this explains why they were so hostile toward me and caused me verbal and bodily harm. Your grandpa intended you to know the truth and utilize the money to get out of that trap. I know this is hard for you to comprehend, Amelia. But hold on, are they really mistreating you? Mr. Spencer expressed his amazement in his tone. I nodded after inhaling deeply. I brushed my tears away. Indeed, they do, but I'm sure karma will give them comfort shortly. In any case, Mr. Spencer, thank you. I refuse to let their dishonesty to dictate my future. I'll compile proof and retaliate. Amelia, I respect your strength. I'll do every effort to provide you with legal help. We're going to make them pay for what they did. I straightened my back and got to my feet, full of bravery. They can't win, I promise. I'm going to defend my heritage and myself. They'll have to pay for their actions. Mr. Spencer gave a nod, adoration shining in his eyes. Amelia, you have my undying support. We'll see to it that justice is done. I walked out of his office with a purposeful gait and a clear resolve. I'm committed to finding the truth, assembling proof against Samuel and Rita, and taking back my life from the web of lies. My grandfather was ultimately laid to rest the next day. All of his inheritance will pass into my name and rights in 30 days. However, I was unable to stop Samuel from abusing me physically as soon as I got home. He continued bugging me about my inheritance, asking questions like, "Where is it?" and "Why am I not giving it to him?" I again told him that I still didn't have it, but he repeatedly smacked me in response. He would become so enraged that he would strike out violently at me. He would land most of his hits on me, emotionally and physically. The deep-set scars are concealed by long-sleeve shirts and thick makeup. I'm gathering evidence, so even though I have the luxury of hiring a lawyer now, I still allow them to abuse me. Every time I felt that he was going to hurt me, I would covertly videotape his assaults. I documented all of my injuries, both recent and old, by taking photos of them and compiling them. His mother observed everything with icy disinterest. For all this time, Samuel's harshness was sustained by her tacit support. She enjoyed the power dynamics that held me in their poisoned hold and delighted in the control they had over me. Dedicated to ending this abusive cycle, I came up with a scheme to collect proof against Samuel and Rita. I needed to remain undercover and take care not to raise any red flags. I hired a private investigator to assist me in surreptitiously recording their discussions and discovering their genuine motivations, through covert recordings. Samuel started abusing me more and more as I carried out my covert operation. What had previously been contained, wrath erupted into a horrific tempest that tore through our house. His fists would find their target, and I would tremble in horror, the anguish coursing through every part of my body. But I became more determined with every hit. The idea that liberation was within grasp gave me courage and resolve. With the proof I had laboriously gathered, the day of reckoning finally arrived. I went up against Rita and Samuel. "We need to talk." I held out a folder of evidence in front of them and stood tall. Rita and Samuel exchanged nervous looks, obviously surprised by my increased strength. However, they soon gave me a smug smile and made fun of me for being so forward. "Samuel and Rita, enough is enough. I am aware of the reality of our union. Everything about it was a lie, a way for you two to take advantage of my wealth." My hubby enjoyed making fun of me. "Amelia, who are you talking about? You are exaggerating." In front of them, I unfolded the packet and showed them the fake marriage license. "Samuel, I have proof. Look at the forgeries, the phone calls in private, everything. I'm able to expose your falsehoods in court by taking this up." My mother-in-law's eyes darted about anxiously, and her face turned pale. "Oh please, we meant no damage at all. Our only concern was your best interests. What's best for me? Do you define love and caring in this way? Via coercion and mistreatment. You two no longer believe you have authority over me. Your only concern was what was best for the two of you, and that is what I inherited. You're not even concerned about the suffering you've brought me." Samuel got up and walked fiercely in my direction, igniting his rage once again. Anger was twisted over his features. He clenched his jaw and lunged for my throat, but I moved aside to prevent him from touching me. "You believe you can intimidate us. Amelia, we all have our own methods. Keep us from going too far." The noise of sirens broke the silence as Samuel lifted his hands again, about to hit me. There was a victorious look on my face. "Oh, Samuel, don't worry. I've implemented safety precautions. The police are heading over." Samuel froze, terror taking the place of his rage. Fearfully, his mother grabbed Samuel's arm, and her eyes widened. "Oh, it feels so good to see them becoming the underdog now. Amelia, please refrain from calling the cops. Anything you desire, will do. Give us one opportunity, please." My eyes grew sad and determined at the same time, and my grin vanished. "Rita, it's too late to listen to your hollow assurances. It's been much too long since you revealed your actual self. It's time for the government to step in. I'll let the law make the final decision because I deserve justice." The sound of police sirens intensified a few moments later. With frightened looks, Samuel and Rita knew their doom was already decided. I spoke to them one final time while standing erect and sounding determined. "Samuel and Rita, this is the end of the line. I shall at last obtain the freedom and justice I am due, and you will pay the price for your deeds." With a plan to seize control of the situation, the cops burst through the front entrance. Rita and Samuel's cheeks grew even more pale as their chances of getting away vanished. After the authorities placed them under arrest, court cases were initiated. I described the atrocities I had gone through, including the arranged marriage and the torture I was subjected to, as I stood in front of the judge. I laid forth the shocking evidence that showed Samuel and Rita for what they really were: monsters. The judge slammed the gavel, delivering a prompt and fair decision that cemented their guilt for the crimes they had done. Rita and Samuel were found guilty of their horrible deeds. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders at that very moment, and I was filled with a fresh feeling of justice and release. I stood there no longer a victim but a survivor as the courtroom emptied. My body was covered with scars that served as a constant reminder of the struggles I had faced and the courage I had mustered. I had been enslaved to abuse for far too long, but the truth had freed me. I accepted my inheritance and rebuilt my life in a way that kept me distant from the cruelty and manipulation that had shadowed it. I also made the decision to work on myself in order to recover and develop. I committed my life to advocating for and bringing attention to domestic abuse, resolute in her mission to end the cycle for those people caught in sane circumstances. To be happy and pleased is, in my opinion, the best retaliation against your mistreatment and exploitation.